All right, this is cool. 2 American astronauts and 1 Russian cosmonaut are headed back to Earth right now after spending nearly half a year aboard the International Space Station. Joe Acaba, Mark Vande Hei and Alexander Mishikin left the ISS about 3 hours ago. In the last few minutes, their capsule plunged into Earth's atmosphere. They are scheduled to land in Kazakhstan any moment now. You're watching live pictures, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, as they shake hands just from moments ago as they celebrate their return. You are now looking at live pictures from the Command Control Center there. We're going to bring in Bill Harwood now. He is a CBS News space consultant, and he's connected his technology, is on his webcam there in Merritt Island, Florida, and can talk with us about what this all means. So, Bill, what can you tell us about these 3 gentlemen returning to Earth right now, looking pretty ecstatic?
Oh, yeah, well, they will. The video we were showing a moment ago was from earlier in the day when they were departing the International Space Station and floating inside their Soyuz spacecraft. We haven't yet seen them here in the final stages of reentry. They should be on the ground momentarily. The recovery forces are pretty quick about getting to the capsule, helping them out, and letting them begin their readjustment to Earth's gravity. Of course, Alexander Mishikin, the commander of the Soyuz, he's the outgoing space station commander, a veteran space flyer. So is Joe Acaba. Mark Vande Hei, of course, was making his first flight, so this is all new to him. This is his first reentry and landing, and by all accounts, aboard a Soyuz, that's an exciting ride. So I think they're all looking forward to getting home and chatting with friends and family.
Talk to us about what their life has been like up in space, conducting research and really being far away from the rest of us.
Well, you know, it's kind of a routine thing now for these astronauts. They typically spend 5 months to 6 months on board the space station. They liken it, or you can think of it maybe as what researchers experience in Antarctica when they're down there for 6 months at a time. You're very isolated. You're cut off from the rest of humanity, if you will. And, of course, on the station, that's carried to the extremes. There's only 6 people up there at most. So, you know, I won't say it's lonely. They get video conferences with friends and family. They have an internet telephone. They can pick that up and dial home whenever they feel like it, or at least whenever they're within range of their satellites. So they've got an awful lot of creature comforts. They've got a big screen TV. They can watch movies together, sporting events, things like that. So it's not nearly as isolated as it was back in the beginning of the space station program. But at the same time, they're still away from the rest of the planet. So I guess it can get lonely.
And we're just taking another look at the video as they were, I guess, loading into the capsule that's bringing them down to Earth right now. And as we look at this animation, which shows us how this reentry takes place, can you just walk us through the stages?
Sure. You know, the Soyuz spacecraft is a very tried and true spacecraft the Russians have been flying for years. It's made up of 3 modules, but the crew is in the central descent module. That's the only part of the spacecraft that has a heat shield that can protect it from reentry. So just before they reach the top of the atmosphere at an altitude of about 62 miles or so, that descent module slams into the atmosphere. They're still moving at nearly 5 miles per second orbital velocity. And, of course, when they hit the atmosphere at that speed, it slows down very, very fast through atmospheric friction, and that generates a tremendous amount of heat, more than 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. The crew experiences a little bit more than 3 times the pull of gravity. That's the deceleration they feel, and that lasts for, you know, maybe 10 minutes or so. And from that point down, they come out of that plasma heating zone. A few moments later, their big parachutes inflate, and the last 10 minutes of the ride is under the parachute to a rocket-assisted touchdown in Kazakhstan. A very jarring touchdown. You know, it's not like a space shuttle that touches down on a runway. But they've been doing this for years this way, and so far, so good. It works. It's a pretty reliable spacecraft.
Sounds like a bit of a joyride. Boy, they made the landing seem soft in the animation that we just looked at, but a great breakdown there of how exactly they safely return humans back to Earth. I think we're now looking back at live images from the command center. Now, what about the group that's already on the International Space Station? Because apparently a group already arrived back in December. What was their role?
Yeah, you know, they are in kind of staggered 3-person shifts. So Anton Shkaplerov, the current space station commander, and his 2 crewmates, Scott Tingle and a Japanese astronaut, Norishige Kanai, got there back in mid-December. They're going to be up there until June. And now looking at video, we can see the spacecraft on the ground. That is the parachute billowing off to the side. So it looks like they got down right on schedule. And
all right. So these are live pictures
so,
we're both looking at now. As you can see the parachute streaming off there to the right as they check and see and make sure that the crew is all right. And I understand we have some audio we can listen into. Let's check that out. Apparently that was live as well, and we've missed that part. So what happens at this stage once they've hit the ground and the crew is there walking up, trying to make sure they're okay? You know, I'm told that when you spend that much time in space, some astronauts get taller because there's no pressure and gravity to kind of keep you in place. How long will it take for these guys to feel like themselves again?
Yeah, you know, that's a brief phenomenon. Their spines stretch out without gravity to compress it. But that gets back down to, hang on just 1 minute, just listening. They're saying they landed right on schedule. That's a good sign. You know, we had overcast skies over there in Kazakhstan, so we didn't get to see the spacecraft coming down under the parachute.
Yeah, it's a cloudy day.
You know, after 6 months or 5 months in space, it typically takes, they say, about a full month before returning astronauts begin to feel like themselves again, get their land legs back. You know, there are some balance issues folks have initially. You know, they're used to just setting something down and letting go, and it stays there, you know. And, of course, it takes a little getting used to the fact that if you let it go now, it's going to fall down. So lots of inner ear adaptation that has to take place. Of course, you got to build your muscle strength back up. But they exercise for that in orbit. Each astronaut spends about 2 hours a day that entire time they're in space exercising to make sure that they've got that strength when they get back. And it still takes about a month before they report feeling back to normal. But not to say it's almost a year before all of the effects completely disappear.
Now, we're being told that the helicopters are circling there and on their way to pick the gentleman up. These are 2 American astronauts and 1 Russian cosmonaut. Talk to us about how responsibilities are divided while they're working on the International Space Station and what everyone's roles really are.
Well, that's right. I mean, the key word, you said it, it's international. There's 2 segments on board the station. Part of the station is built by the Russians. Other parts built by the U.S., European Space Agency, and Japan. So that part of the station is called the United States Operating Segment, or USOS. The other part is the Russian station. Now, the Russians provide all of the rocket thrusters and propellant you need to keep the station in orbit. The U.S. side provides big gyroscopes that maintain the station's orientation in space so they don't have to use rocket fuel. So neither side can operate the station without the other. And of course, the Europeans are there. They've got their own module. The Japanese have a research module. All of these flight control centers are working together all the time, 24/7. And it's a tremendously complex operation that they've been doing now for years. You know, people have been on the station continuously since the year 2000.
I'm glad you made that point,
it's quite
because
an achievement. You know, whether you think it's...
You're absolutely right. We're getting word that the crew is feeling well. That coming from NASA. You're seeing the camera push back in and look a bit closer at where the crew was, and now it's panning over to the parachute there. But talk about what it takes. Everyone at this stage is saying this was a perfect landing as planned. But how dangerous is this? How risky is this? And how much planning does it take to get this right?
Well, it takes a tremendous amount of planning. I mean, part of this is, you know, they've been doing it for so long. Some of that gets to be, I won't call it routine because I don't think it ever is. And there's no question it's a risky endeavor. I mean, when you think about it, when you're flying in orbit, you're moving at nearly 5 miles per second, which is a crazy number. I mean, who can visualize that? But 5 miles a second is something like 85 football fields a second. Okay, so that's really, really fast. And when you hit the atmosphere going that fast, the heating, the deceleration forces are extreme. And so you've got to build a spacecraft that can withstand that and keep a crew protected while they're coming home in that environment. So it's definitely not routine, but they've done it so many times now, it kind of takes on that appearance. But I don't know. I'm always a little bit nervous when they come down just because you never know. But they do a pretty good job of it.
And there it is, 2 American astronauts and 1 Russian cosmonaut safely back on Earth after spending almost half a year aboard the International Space Station. Bill Harwood has been walking us through this, and we really appreciate all of your insight, Bill. You have a great one. There he is joining us from webcam in Merritt Island, Florida.